Whew. And that is all the campaigns. Now there's just only one thing left: reading and learning. Daniel of Moscow. In the 13th century, Moscow had fallen to the Mongol invasion and rebuilt itself from the ashes. But of all the Rus principalities, Moscow was still one of the smallest and least powerful. That is, until a new prince came to the throne. 1272 saw Daniel Alexandrovich, the youngest son of the Rus hero Alexander Nevsky, assume full power as Prince of Moscow. From humble beginnings, Daniel increased Moscow's influence through diplomatic alliances and strong city defenses. An exemplar for peaceful solutions, he is known only to have participated in one battle. By the end of Daniel's reign, he controlled the length of the Moskva River, igniting Moscow's ascendancy from city to state. Daniel's descendants would in turn rise to become the most powerful princes of the Rus domain, cementing Moscow's dynastic claim to rule. Ushkuinniki. Stalking the trade routes of medieval Russia were bands of roaming pirates known as Ushkuinniki. Although they were few in number, their attacks would shake the very foundation of Mongol-Rus relations. Time and again, these bandits seized vital silver shipments, captured entire towns, and controlled river transport. They raided merchants for their booty and sold it on for profit. Soon the flow of silver all but dried up, spelling disaster for the Rus princes. As they began to miss their tribute payments to the horde, the threat of Mongol retribution drew ever closer. The desperate princes tried again and again to stop the bandit raids and re-establish safe trade routes, but their efforts failed to keep favor with the Khan, whose patience would not hold out much longer. Saint Dmitry Donskoy. Grand Prince Dmitry did not always have easy relations with the hierarchs of the Orthodox Church. But his great victory at Kulikovo made him a national hero, one credited even today with turning the tide in the struggle for Rus independence from the Golden Horde. Legends grew around the battle, including the story that the venerable abbot Sergei of Radonets blessed the prince and sent his two bravest monks into battle with Dmitry to inspire the troops and provide spiritual legitimacy to the fight. Still, the Russian Orthodox Church did not soon forget Dmitry's conflicts with the religious leaders of his own time. It was only in 1988, some 600 years after his great victory, that the Church made Dmitry Donskoy a saint, giving him religious stature to match his historical and cultural importance. The Empire Falters. The vast and powerful Mongol Empire had held Muscovy in its grip for almost 2 centuries. But despite its might, the empire was not immune to civil war. Genghis Khan's grandsons in the east had fought bitterly for the title of Great Khan, and later in the west, competing branches of the family squabbled for supremacy over Russia, Persia, and the Crimea. Khan Tokhtamesh of the Golden Horde became embroiled in a long series of violent conflicts with his former supporter Timur, the dominant Khan in the Middle East. Timur was strong and the war was devastating for Tokhtamesh. He lost his army, his capital, and was eventually forced to flee. As the remnants of the Golden Horde fought with neighboring Khanates, the time had come for Muscovy to seize upon the weakness of its long-standing overlords. Marfa the Mayoress. Marfa the Mayoress of Novgorod is recorded by history both as a legendary people's hero and a treasonous heretic. As Novgorod withstood a decade of attempts to bring it under Muscovite control, it was Marfa, the widow of Novgorod's mayor, who was elevated as the charismatic leader of the Republic, standing in defiance to the rule of the all-powerful tyrant of Moscow, Ivan III. Meanwhile, the Russian Orthodox Church feared the spread of Catholicism into Muscovy, and so balked at Novgorod's friendly dealings with Western lords. The church needed a real-world demon on which to blame this devilry. Marfa, being a wealthy and powerful woman, became their target. After Novgorod finally fell to Moscow, Marfa was exiled, her lands confiscated, and she faded from the historical record. Little is known about the real Marfa, but her twin legends live on in folklore. The Cannon Yard. Across the banks of the Ugra River, the Mongol army stared down the barrels of Ivan III's formidable array of cannons, and retreated. It was a final stand, a display of might that shook Muscovy free from its conquerors. Under Ivan III, Rus' firepower advanced ever more rapidly. Where before the Rus had adapted simple guns to their neighbors and used them only to defend against sieges, Moscow now had its own cannon yard, a great foundry where huge cannons were cast in bronze and mobilized with carriage wheels. Now they could be brought to the battlefield, their power shattering stone walls and bringing cities to their knees. Muscovite cannons would continue evolving to enormous scales, and stand as an imposing symbol of the military might of the Rus. Prosperity and power. In 1498, at the Cathedral of Assumption, one of the most grandiose spectacles of the age took place, the coronation of Ivan III's grandson, Dmitry Ivanovich, as Grand Prince of Moscow and heir to Ivan's title of Grand Prince of all Rus. The building was adorned with gleaming cupola domes. It boasted an innovative blend of traditional and Renaissance architecture, and inside an imposing wall of richly painted religious icons loomed over the congregation. The lavishness of the ceremony was designed by Ivan III's ministers to establish beyond doubt Moscow's place as a center of Rus power. Dmitry the grandson eventually lost his place as heir to his uncle Vasily, and would spend the rest of his days in prison. Nevertheless, Ivan continued to use elaborate ceremony and ornate monuments to celebrate Moscow's ascendancy. This legacy of power and spectacle would earn him the posthumous moniker of Ivan the Great. Ivan the Terrible. Ivan IV's victory over the Kazan Khanate marked the beginning of Russian expansion across Asia. To commemorate this great battle, Ivan commissioned the construction of the most elaborate monument the world has yet seen, St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow. But as Ivan campaigned farther and farther beyond his own domain, the cost of maintaining his spending was passed to the Rus people. Crippling taxation soon bred discontent in the provinces. Certain that rebellion was festering, Ivan dispatched his fearsome private police to hunt down his political opponents. And, convinced of their treachery, he also ordered the arrest or murder of any relatives who might one day challenge his own son's right to the throne. A generation later, Muscovy was left with no viable heirs. The centuries-long dynasty that began with Daniel of Moscow had come to a calamitous end.